This video is brought to you by Spigen. The Pixel 7a is Google's latest mid-range phone, successor to the previous Pixel 6a. Now, while on the surface these two phones may look similar, if we dig a little deeper, you'll find that there are some crucial differences between them that you should know about, particularly when it comes to the display, camera, as well as performance. All of which we'll be looking at today to find out which is best, whether it be the new Pixel 7a or the now more affordable Pixel 6a. As always guys, I will leave all the purchase links and the best offers for the Pixel phones down in the description. But before we start, I am doing a giveaway on this brand new iPhone 14. And if you want a chance to win, be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment with your Instagram username. And then follow me on Instagram, where I'll announce the winner on June the 11th. Okay, so first in terms of price, the 7a with 128GB sells for $499, which is actually $50 more than what Google originally sold the 6a for. However, now they sell the Pixel 6a for $349, which means that between the 7a and their 6a, there's a $150 price difference. And this is quite significant. Effectively means that the 7a is 43% more expensive than the 6a. But the question is, do you get 43% more phone? Well, let's first look at the design. Now, on the outside, they look very similar. They have that recognizable Pixel look. I have them both here in this charcoal color. Now, I have found the charcoal color to be a little bit lighter on the 7a, and it also doesn't have that two-tone design that you will find on the 6a. On the back, both are still made of plastic, and while I do prefer the feel and look of glass, plastic will be more crack resistant, but at the same time will also be more prone to scratching. Now, speaking of the back, the 7a does now add for the first time wireless charging, something you will not find on the 6a, but we'll talk more about charging and battery life in a sec. But the biggest difference in terms of the design, I would say, is the camera visor, where the 7a uses aluminum and the 6a uses plastic. Now, I would say I prefer the look of the 7a, creating a little bit of contrast with that matte texture and then that glossy back, and also looks more closely like the higher end Pixel 7. The 7a as well as the 6a both feature an aluminum matte frame, and this I think strongly contributes to the general solid feel that you get with both phones in the hand. There is no bending, no creaks, and they generally feel well made. That said, both phones do feature plastic buttons, and while this is a relatively small thing, you do feel the difference between plastic and metal, so I would have liked to see metal buttons perhaps on the next generation. Also worth noting is that my 7a actually came with some scuffs on the antenna bands right out of the box, and this is something that I was not able to remove, and it's also something that you don't want to see on a brand new phone. Turning to the front, both phones feature the same Gorilla Glass 3. Now, this is an older standard of glass. In fact, my 6a has gathered some hairline scratches just from normal day-to-day use, and Gorilla Glass 3 is also not as crack resistant as the newer Gorilla Glass Victus, so on both phones, I definitely recommend a screen protector and a case. Under the glass, both phones feature a 6.1-inch Full HD Plus OLED display, and there's two big differences between them. First is that the 7a now has a 90Hz refresh rate compared to the 60Hz on the 6a. Now, normally you see phones go for either 60 or 120, so I was very curious to see where 90Hz sat in terms of the feel, whether it feel more like 60 or more like 120. And well, it turns out that while technically speaking, 90 of course sits right in the middle between 60 and 120, in a real world experience, I can tell you that the 90Hz feels much closer to 120Hz, where everything just feels extra smooth on the 7a when compared to the 6a. But strangely, the 7a still comes with 60Hz out of the box, and you have to actually manually enable the 90Hz in the settings. Now, Google probably did this to save on battery, but still, I highly recommend you switch to 90Hz instead. And then the second big difference between them is the brightness, where the 7a is actually 100 nits brighter, and this goes a long way. Now, I would say that both phones are far from the brightest I've ever seen. The 7a is noticeably more visible in direct sun when compared to the 6a, where the 6a can be a little bit difficult to see at times. I also found the color calibration to be far better on the 7a, where the 6a has a noticeable green tinge and color bias that it sort of applies to all content, where the 6a is more neutral, albeit a little bit purple at times. I would say neither are outstanding when it comes to the color reproduction, but the 7a is still more accurate. The Pixel 6a was known for its off-axis color shift, where the colors would sort of change as you angle the display from left to right, and unfortunately, this is equally present on the 7a. It looks fine when you look at it head on, but then when you move the display, kind of angling it from left to right, colors do shift and change, and this affects the general immersion. While the displays on the A series Pixel phones is not their strongest point, still I would say the 7a with its 90Hz refresh rate and higher brightness is a significant step up compared to the 6a, thus creating a better user experience. But you know what I do like about both the 7a as well as the 6a is that they look quite high-end for their price, not far from any flagships with their relatively thin bezels and good 6.1-inch size, which does strike that perfect balance between portability and usability, unlike something like, for example, the iPhone SE. The 6a and 7a feature the same underscreen fingerprint sensor, and this is my go-to way of unlocking the phone. Now, it may not be the fastest or the most accurate, but it does generally work fine. Now, the 7a does also add Face Unlock, which is fast, but is going to be nowhere near as secure as something like Face ID, so I suggest using the fingerprint sensor instead. But before we talk about the camera, battery, as well as longevity, some of the areas where the Pixel phones shine the most, we know that durability is not their biggest strength, so it is important to protect it, and this is where Spigen comes in. Spigen offer a range of cases for the Pixel 7a, each with its own unique feature and design to best match your style. So first is the Tough Armor case. Now this uses a two-layer design that I think not only looks good, but will also protect against day-to-day wear, and also uses air cushion technology for extra corner protection, especially important for those drops. But my favorite feature is the built-in kickstand, which actually sits completely flush with the case when not in use, and then when you pop it out, lets you instantly prop up your phone. This is great for having it on your desk, or say to watch videos while traveling. Now the 7a comes in some really cool colors, and the best way to showcase your phone's color is with a clear case. More specifically, this clear case from Spigen, the Ultra Hybrid, which also has anti-yellowing protection for long-lasting clarity, and also integrates the air cushion technology to protect against day-to-day wear. And then there's the liquid air case, which is the coolest looking to me thanks to this really intricate truss pattern, which adds a little bit of texture as well as grip to your phone while also adding minimal bulk, being only 0.07 inches in thickness, and I think just really looks great on this phone. And finally, there is the rugged armor. Now this case is meant for ultimate protection. I really like the solid feel it gives in the hand, adding extra grip along the edges, as well as raised edges going around the display, as well as the camera for that extra protection. I think it has a really sleek look, and I especially like the touch of carbon fiber here on the back. No matter the situation, Spigen has your Pixel 7a covered, no pun intended. To learn more, be sure to click the links in the description. Now, Pixel phones are known for their cameras, both for the image quality as well as the intelligent AI features that they add. The Pixel 7a brings some big camera improvements. It features a new 64 megapixel main sense, which will use 4 times larger the pixels to create even better 16 megapixel photos. As well as this, we also get a 13 megapixel ultra wide lens, which is now a little bit wider, and a 13 megapixel selfie camera. Compared to that, the 6a features a 12.2 megapixel main sensor, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and an 8 megapixel selfie camera. So you can tell that from a specs perspective, there is a pretty big difference, but specs don't tell the whole story. Let's take a look at some real-world examples. In general, I found the 7a to produce a brighter image, letting in more light thanks to the larger sensor and being more detailed due to the higher megapixel count when compared to the 6a, resulting in an objectively better looking photo. The 7a also significantly improved the color science, providing a more true-to-life look, where the 6a has a green tinge, and you'll see this throughout the examples. In this close-up shot, the 7a also has a more shallow depth of field and more detail in the watch face when compared to the 6a. The digital 2x telephoto lens is also significantly better on the 7a. This portrait shot of me just looks more natural on the 7a, focus is spot on, and there's some real depth in the image. By comparison, the 6a over-sharpens and overexposes. And like the main lens, the ultra-wide lens on the 7a lets in more light and is also sharper. You can see this in the leaves as well as in the water. Colors too are more true to life on the 7a, where again the 6a does apply that greenish hue. Turning to the selfie camera, the 7a has more accurate skin tones and depth, so you can actually see a bit of bokeh in the background while my face stays sharp. The 6a also seems to apply a little bit of skin smoothing, but in terms of sharpness in the details in my hair and face, they are similar. Now, it may not look like it, but this room was actually almost pitch black to test the night mode, and here both the 6a and the 7a managed to create light where there is none. Really impressive. But if we look extra close, you can see that there is less noise and more detail in the controller, as well as more accurate colors on the wooden floor on the 7a. And when it comes to video, both the 6A and 7A are quite good, with equally decent autofocus and very good image stabilization. But like with photos, the larger sensor on the 7A means better details and more light in videos too. And then unique to the Pixel line are Google's AI photography features, where both the 6A and the 7A integrate Google Lens. Check out how it detects my Apple Watch in this photo and automatically pulls up a purchase link. But my favorite of these features is Magic Eraser, which lets you instantly remove objects from photos, and this works surprisingly well. Equally well, in fact, on both the 6A and the 7A, and this is a genuinely cool feature to have. All in all, the camera system on the Pixel 6a was already quite good, especially for the price, but now the 7a makes it even better. With its larger sensor, higher megapixel counts, plus far better color science add up to a solid upgrade over the 6a. If camera is particularly important to you, I would say the 7a is a solid step up in every way when compared to the 6a. But what about battery life, and does the new 90Hz display on the 7a have an impact? Well, Google advertised 24 hours of battery life on both the 6A as well as the 7A, but this number doesn't really mean much in the real world. So with normal mixed day-to-day use, I can say I get around 7 hours of screen on time, both on the 6A as well as the 7A. And 7 hours is decent. It's better than the iPhone SE's 5 to 7 hours, but still not as good as the Galaxy S23's 7 to 8. Basically, what this means is that both the 6A as well as the 7A, if I'm lucky, last me all day and evening, though in most cases I do need to top up towards the end of the day to comfortably get through the evening. By the way, switching the 7A back to 60Hz adds around 10% of battery life, and this is why I think Google sets it to 60Hz out of the box. But still, in my opinion, it is worth switching to the 90Hz refresh rate for that smoother operating experience. In terms of charging, the 7A now adds wireless charging, and while it is good to see wireless charging in an A-series Pixel line, it is quite slow at just 7.5 watts. For reference, both the S23 and the iPhone 14 charge at double the speed at 15 watts. And then using a USB-C cable for wired charging, both the 6A as well as the 7A charge at a below average 18 watts, meaning that top-ups throughout the day just won't be as fast. Interestingly, when comparing the dual speaker system, while they are similar, I found the 7A to be a bit louder, but the 6A to actually be a bit cleaner in the mids and highs. In terms of the haptics, both are good, but the 7A is slightly tighter and more prominent, meaning you're less likely to miss calls when on silent. Let's talk about performance and longevity. Now, the 6A features Google's Tensor chip and comes with 6GB of RAM, where the 7A features Google's Tensor G2 chip, the same as you'll find on the Pixel 7 and 7 Pro, and instead comes with 8GB of RAM. Now, what does this difference mean in day-to-day use? Well, both the 6A as well as the 7A are snappy, and I would say both perform well. In fact, this is one of my favorite features of the Pixel A series. You don't really get many other phones that perform this well, especially at this price. Now, if I were to launch apps side by side, the 7A will be slightly faster, but the difference here really is minimal. But what about longevity? Now, longevity is always particularly important to me, as this determines how long the phone will last. So first, for the 7A, Google promises 3 years of Android updates and 5 years of security updates. Now, I don't fully understand how this can still be less than Samsung's 4 to 5 years and still far from Apple's 6 to 7 years. 3 to 5 years on the 7A is still above average when looking at the Android market as a whole. Compared to that, the 6A with the older chipset will get likely 2 more years of Android updates and 4 more years of security updates. Now, this 1 to 2 year difference is quite significant, and if you want your phone to last, the 7A will be a better long-term investment, even with the higher upfront cost. Okay, so at the end of the day, which phone is better? Well, at the start of the video, we established that the 7A is 43% more expensive compared to the 6A, and the question is, does the 7A offer 43% more phone? Well, in terms of the design, I would say no. They are very similar with the same build materials and size. However, when it comes to the display though, I would say yes. The 90Hz refresh rate and the 100 nits brighter display on the 7A are big advantages that, in my opinion, are worth paying for. And the same can be said for the camera system, where the 7A, I think the camera system is twice as good as on the 6A, thanks to the larger sensor, higher megapixel count, and better colors for significantly better photo as well as video. I'd say when it comes to battery life, both the 6A and the 7A are similar. The 7A does of course add wireless charging, though still, I would like to see Google improve the battery life and the charge speeds in the future. And finally, when it comes to performance and longevity, while the 6A and the 7A both perform well today, 6A, the 7A will last significantly longer, and this is thanks to having the newer Tensor G2 chip, making it a better long-term investment. At the end of the day, if you want an affordable phone that is decent across the board and that doesn't need to last very long, the 6A still offers a compelling package, especially now at only $349. That said, with the big improvements in the display and camera, I firmly believe that the 7A offers more than 43% more phone than the 6A and is more than worth the $150 extra, especially if you want a phone to last for the next 3 to 5 years. Anyway guys, let me know if you have any questions at all. If you are interested, I will leave all the purchase links down in the description, and if you haven't seen them yet, I highly recommend watching my Galaxy S23 versus iPhone 14 video and my Galaxy S23 Ultra versus 14 Pro Max. Thanks again for watching guys, I hope you enjoyed this comparison, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.